It's time for CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. Find us on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play Music, YouTube, and TuneIn. The easiest thing to do is tell Alexa or Siri to play CBJ in 30. Here's your host, Bob McElligott.
Welcome to CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. It is a Monday mailbag edition, and yes, we have made it to Canada, the third and final stop on this three-game road trip for the Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets come into tomorrow night's game against the Montreal Canadiens with a record of 1-1 so far on this road trip. They won in Arizona, they lost in Colorado, and now in this very unlikely third stop on this trip, they will try to beat the Montreal Canadiens in the first meeting of the year between the two teams. Well, I've got a lot of questions from you, as you might imagine. That's why I do this show on Mondays, to answer your questions. So I'm going to get to those in just a few minutes here. As first, I'm going to tell you about Telhio Credit Union, because they are the ones that make sure that this show exists for me to answer your questions. And at Telhio Credit Union, well, you may have a lot of questions. They have a lot of answers to your questions when it comes to your finances and to your banking. The first question that they have that you may have that they can answer on their website is, why should you join a credit union? Well, they've got the answer to that right there at telhio.org. And they have the answer to many other questions, like checking accounts. What do you have and what kind of perks do you have? They've got that answer. Business or personal, they've got that answer. When it comes to a loan, what kind of loans do they have? What is the current loan rate? They've got that information for you. Just so many other things. So just go to telhio.org and start surfing around, and there might be questions that you have you don't even know that you have, but you'll start to see the answers, and you'll be able to move right along and answer those questions that, again, you didn't even know that you had. The other thing you can do is you can stop by any local Telhio Credit Union office. Telhio Credit Union is open to everyone in central and southwestern Ohio. They're federally insured by NCUA. All right, so let's get to it. Your questions that you have sent me via Twitter at BobbyMacSports, and the very first question this week comes from Dale. Dale says, I've seen a lot of missed passes and players bunched together on the offense in the last couple of games. It seems to me that Torts has got a chance to look at just about every combination, and it's time to settle in on some lines to help with the flow of the offense. Your thoughts? Well, yeah, that's great. It would be great to settle in on some lines. The only problem is, because he's done all these combinations, and yet there has been inconsistency, is the point that I'm trying to make here. So you want him to settle on, some certain line combinations, and that's fine. I understand that. And they can grow together, and there can be some continuity and all that stuff. But the biggest problem is he still hasn't found what he's looking for, as you two would say. He just hasn't found that combination that he can say, okay, this line for sure needs to stay together, and this line for sure needs to stay together, because they just haven't played well enough to allow him to do that so far. So, yeah, it would be great to put together some lines, but he's not just going to jam these guys together and say, well, this is eventually going to work. He's going to wait for it to work before he does something like that. Alex Bates says, what happened to focusing on defense? Well, what do you mean, Alex? I mean, I'll tell you this. Because when you're saying, I'm assuming, like the other night against Colorado, there were some breakdowns and some guys got free and 2-on-1s and all that stuff. I think the biggest thing that has happened to focusing very highly on defense is that there has been no offense. And that has put guys out of sorts. All of a sudden, the defensemen, well, it's two things. The defensemen are trying to do too much. And secondly, they're not getting anything accomplished. Werenski had a goal in Colorado. But Seth Jones has not looked like Seth Jones so far. I mean, he is really struggling. He is really out of sorts. He is really looking for his own game. And the Blue Jackets need that offense from Zach Werenski, from Seth Jones, and they're not getting it right now. And I think that those guys are now starting to push. I think especially with Jones, I think he's pushing. I think he's doing things that he hasn't done before, and I think that that's resulting in breakdowns. Maybe maybe passes he's trying to force that he normally wouldn't have forced, and pucks are getting picked off. And I'm not hanging it all on Seth Jones by any means. Don't get me wrong, because there are 6 guys back there, and on any given shift, any one of them can be responsible. But I'm just saying, you're talking about why not focus on defense. Why are they getting away from that? Because the offense is struggling so much, in my opinion. That's why they're getting away from the total defense, because they got to score. They just need to get goals, and the defensemen are trying to get back to being a big part of that, and that's what has made this team successful the last couple of years, is those defensemen being offensively minded and cashing in on their opportunities, which just aren't happening right now. Camille McDonald has the next question, and this is a good question. What else does number 13 need to do to score? It's ridiculous how close he comes, but it just won't go into the net. Also, any idea what's up with Josh Anderson? I love the Monday mailbag, especially when they're posted bright and early so I can listen after my 8 a.m. class. Thanks. All right, Camille. Good questions, though, about Cam Atkinson. What does he have to do? I don't know, and he doesn't know, and that's the real problem, because he's a goal scorer who is not scoring goals right now, and it's got to be frustrating for him. I think the more he gets those great chances and it doesn't go in, the more frustrated he gets, and then it just compounds upon itself. So what has to happen for him? He needs one of those to go in. I think he's got to get an ugly goal, a goal that, a puck that he shoots that shouldn't go in, that somehow does go in. I think he needs to get an empty net goal. I think he just needs to get something that will give him confidence. No matter how he does score a goal, he's just got to get one. He's got to get 1, to get 2, to get 3, to get 4. And I've had this conversation about Cam Atkinson for years. I mean, this isn't just the first time that we've had this talk when it's come to Cam Atkinson. He gets very streaky. He's streaking in the wrong direction right now when it comes to scoring goals. He can turn it around and go the other way very quickly, but he does need to do that. So for him, he just needs one of those shots to go in to find his confidence. As far as number 77, Josh Anderson, what is going on with him? Again, to me, when Josh Anderson is playing his game, which he is playing with speed, uncontrollable speed, and I don't mean that he can't control his speed. I'm talking about the opposition can't control the speed that he's playing with. When he is playing like that, playing fast, and when he is finishing his checks and being a threat in every single shift, that is when he is at his best. And I don't think that he has been playing like that consistently in the time that he has skated this year. And I say the time he skated because he did miss some games because of an injury. So whether he is still being hampered by a lingering injury that he's not talking about, I don't know. If that's the case, then that would make a lot of sense, because he just doesn't look like himself. He had 27 goals last year. He's got 1 so far this year. He is consistently missing the net with opportunities. The other night he comes into the zone. Was this the second period? It was right at the end of the period. He gets the puck. He comes into the zone. He's got what should be a good scoring chance, and his awareness of how much time was left in the period was not there. When he got the puck, there were only maybe 6 seconds left in the period. He came in, and instead of just bursting toward the net and taking a shot, he tries to make a pass, and he took what was a good scoring chance and turned it into nothing because time ran out. Now, I have my own theories about players not being able to see the clock, and for years and years and years ago, I asked about putting a clock in the boards where it would be in the player's line of sight. As a matter of fact, and I wish I had this, I know I said it when we used to do our weekly show on a Sunday. When I used to work with Mark Wyant, we talked about it on that show. Commissioner Gary Bettman was at a game. I interviewed him in between periods. I asked him about it because it was a game where there was a power play and it was expiring and nobody knew it. And I asked that question about putting a clock in the line of sight of the players. And I was basically, told in not so many ways that, no, everything's fine. The players know how much time's left. Well, they don't. And Josh Anderson's play the other night was a prime example. And there's been talk about a board or a clock going into the boards in the corner, and I haven't seen it, so I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, he didn't know how much time was left. But if he's feeling good about himself, if he's playing his style of a game, he just picks that puck off in the neutral zone, he comes in, and he rips it on net. knowing it's at the end of the period and not trying to pass it to somebody else, wanting to actually get the goal himself. So he's another one that he's got to just shoot the puck, get it on net, and then get a break. Here's a question from Kelly that says, am I wrong to be concerned by the play of the defensive unit? They seem to be struggling with poor passes and lifting their sticks when moving back to defend the net. Well, the passing certainly has been an issue, and especially the breakout passes from the defensemen. And again, it's not just one guy or two guys that we're talking about. We're talking about everybody as a unit just struggling to make the little plays that we're so used to seeing them make. So no, you're not wrong to be concerned about the play of the defensive unit. Aid Montgomery says, since the 2020 unrestricted free agent goalie class is pretty good, would you think the Blue Jackets would sign someone like Braden Holtby or Thomas Greiss or Mike Smith? What the Blue Jackets are trying to do right now, Aiden, and I understand that question. I get it. But they're trying to fill the spots from within, and they feel that they have some very competent guys in their system playing goal. And I think that they're right. As a matter of fact, I'll just tell you right now, I think Joonas Korpisalo has played way better than I thought he would play this early in the season. I think he has given them a chance to win when he has played games. Look at the game the other night in Colorado. He was terrific. He made some really big saves. He looked very Bobrovsky-like in that game with some of the saves that he made. And I'm talking about saves that, he's bailing you out. Look at Arizona. 2 times. The Blue Jackets coughed the puck up to Michael Grabner on a breakaway, 1-on-1. He makes 2 saves. I think he's doing a really good job in goal. Beyond that, that's a different story. Elvis Merzlikins was just called back from Cleveland and will be here tomorrow. I have some questions about Korpisalo, so I'm not going to go any further on that line of thinking until a question or two here. But anyway, I understand what you're saying. Braden Holtby being there. Thomas Greiss, to me, is a guy that I think he's overachieved with the New York Islanders. I think he has really benefited from Barry Trotz's system. He's not the kind of guy that I would go out and say, I've got to get this guy to be a goalie on my team. Braden Holtby is a little bit different. And I notice on this question there's somebody that replies to it themselves and says Holtby is too inconsistent. Last I checked, Braden Holtby has won a Stanley Cup, and that carries a lot of weight with me. So, I understand what you're saying, but I just don't think that that's a direction that this team is going to go, because whether it is Elvis, whether it is Veini Vehviläinen, who is playing in Cleveland, whether it is Daniil Tarasov, who is only, 20 years old, that they think is maybe the best of the best in this system, I think that is the direction that they want to go. I think they want to keep that I think they want to keep the cost down at that position, and I think you can keep it down. If they wanted to pay $10 million a year for a goaltender, they had one they could have done that with. Now, you can say that guy wouldn't have taken that $10 million, but once upon a time he would have. So I just think that's too much to have invested in that position. I don't think you need a $10 million goalie anymore to win the Stanley Cup. I think you need a solid goaltender, but you can get that solid goaltender for anywhere between $4 and $6 million a year, and if you have a good enough team around them, you can still win a Stanley Cup with it, in my opinion. So I don't see them going out and getting a big-name goaltender, but you never know, because what could happen here? I mean, this could still fall apart and break down, this somewhat experiment that they're doing with all these young goalies being here at the same time. So I say no, but circumstances may dictate that that changes at some point in time. Cameron Maynard says, before the game against the Coyotes, I was going to ask you what it would take to get Emil Bemstrom going and how he was one of the most talked about young guys in the offseason and preseason. Now he has a power play goal in each of the last 2 games. Is this a sign of things to come, perhaps? Well, Cameron, I hope it is. You're right. That's all that was talked about when it came to Emil Bemstrom. He was one of the players that when the Blue Jackets lost to Artemi Panarin, they were saying, hey, we've got some good young guys coming, and Alexander Texier and Emil Bemstrom were those guys, and they're here, and they're playing, and Bemstrom is supposed to be a power play specialist, if you will, in putting the puck in the net with the man advantage, and he hadn't done that until the last 2 games, and they haven't even been his the best goals that he scored on the power play in his life, I would dare to say. They've been a little bit lucky. They've been, they're not, they're highlight reel goals because they're important goals in the games. But, the first one off Darcy Kemper, it's from below the goal line. It's chipped off his shoulder and it goes in. And that's the first one that he gets in his NHL career. The one he got the other night, he kind of bounced to him. He was in right place, right time, which I know is part of it, especially on a power play. So I think this is a sign of things to come. I think he's finally starting to feel like he's ready to play here. I think the game has slowed down enough for him now that you're going to see him get more chances and capitalize on more chances. I really think so, because he's been trending that way. It took him a long time to get that goal, and I think it is just a sign of things to come. So let's see. Let's get to the Joonas Korpisalo stuff, because there is plenty of it. Lenaford says, will Corpy be held accountable by his coaches and teammates for losing his composure again? How many stick bangs is it going to take? Is he mentally not cut out to be a goalie? I'm just going to string this together. I'm going to answer the last part. Is he not mentally cut out? He's very mentally cut out to be a goalie, okay? Don't even start with that. Here's some more on Joonas Korpisalo. This from Lauren. Not to add another question about Corpy to the mailbag, but Torch said that those reactions can't happen. Since he got upset again, I would think that could mean that Elvis is in, but what are your thoughts? And then DC Girl 6 says, Corpy has been pretty cool in the past couple of seasons. Why is he losing it lately? I know he had an issue with that before, but it seemed under control. How do they fix this? Sorry to see this now that he is finally the number one goaltender. So you've got all of that, and I want to lump them all together because it really only warrants one answer. And here's the answer to me. And I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, but I'm going to say it again. I like his passion. I like that he is really invested. And like I said, in Colorado, he made some huge saves. And then that fourth goal that Nazem Kadri scored, actually Seth Jones is reaching around Kadri. The shot comes right off Jones's stick. It sends it at just a slightly different angle. It just messed up the shot, and then it got by him. And he knows at that point, once it's a two-goal game, he knows it's over. And he was upset. And he slammed his stick on the crossbar, I believe it was the other night. Again, I understand and I like the passion. I just don't like the look of it. And I think that's where we all are. I think that's what we're all going to agree upon. We just don't like the look of it. And John Tortorella did say, after the last time, he said it's not going to happen again. And if it does happen again, then we're going to have an issue with it. And it happened the other night. And so if he doesn't play tomorrow, I'm not going to be surprised. As a matter of fact, I think that John Tortorella has put himself into a position, because he's already addressed this as vehemently as he did when it happened before. I think that if he doesn't play him, or if he does play him, against the Canadiens tomorrow night, I think it's actually sending the wrong message. I think he's kind of forced to play somebody else. And Elvis has been recalled from Cleveland, so maybe that's exactly what is going to happen. And if it does happen, I think it's a shame. I really do. Because even though you're passionate, and even though you really want to win, and even though you feel like you let the team down by not making that save, and that's what's going on here. He's not mad at the defense. He's not mad at Seth Jones for getting his stick in there. He's not mad at a forward for not picking a guy up and all that stuff. And they have left him hung out to dry plenty of times. They've left him hung out to dry. But it was that goal where he knew the game was over. He knew that he didn't stop it. And now his team there's no way they're going to be able to get 2 goals in the amount of time that's left. And I think that's what really frustrated him the most. But so I like all that passion. But again, the look is just awful. It's awful, and it's got to stop. And I think it's going to be a shame if he has to miss a game because he could not maintain his composure. I think it's a real shame. And I think it's putting, he is got to be held accountable by his teammates too. And if he ends up missing a game against an Eastern Conference team where the points are pretty important, especially where they're sitting right now, if he has to miss that game because of his antics, that says a lot. And I think that the only thing you can do is keep him out and then have his teammates put the heat on him to knock it off, because as a coach, you put the heat on him, and he still did the same thing. So now you got to get somebody else to put the heat on him, like his teammates. But I also think it's like a child, too, where you've said, if you do this, then you can't do this. And then they did this. So in his case, he shouldn't play tomorrow night because that's what has been established. But we'll see. We'll see if John Tortorella thought it was egregious enough to sit him. And personally, just because of the last conversation, I think it is egregious enough. But we'll wait and see what they decide. And, oh, by the way, I would rather see Korpisalo in between the pipes and making the start because I think he's playing really well right now. So it's going to be frustrating. It's going to be frustrating if he's not the one playing because he just couldn't keep himself within himself mentally. And it's tough. It's tough. He's a passionate guy, but he's got to channel that in a much, much different way. Next question is from Ed. Ed says, who decides the game entrance song each year for the Blue Jackets? Please bring back Machine Head. Well, it's not me, Ed, but the people that do make those decisions listen to this. So I've basically silently, I'd say nothing. It's subtly. I've subtly made your request. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I've made your request. And why does everybody always want to go back to something, just in general, Ed? I mean, what about something new and different? I'm more inclined to go toward the new and different than the old, but that's just me. What do I know? That's just in general, by the way, not that song. That's just me in general. Finally, and I say finally because after this there won't be anything else to say anyway, to be completely honest with you. Avi Stein says, when is it time for a coaching change? The season is quickly going down the drain due to poor special teams play, lack of offensive structure, and improper player utilization. All of that falls on John Tortorella. Well, here we go. John Tortorella all of a sudden isn't smart enough to be a coach of this team. John Tortorella is the problem with this team, this and that. Now, I already know that no matter what I say, that there are going to be people that are going to label me as a John Tortorella apologist right now. Oh, he's tight with Torts. He does the podcast with Torts. He's not going to say anything bad about Torts no matter what. Listen, I'm going to start with a generalization about coaching in the National Hockey League. I think that there are times it is utterly ridiculous how quickly the trigger is pulled on firing a coach in this league. I think this league is the absolute worst as far as allowing a coach to get through situations and work his way through to the other side of it and get a team back to being successful. I think it happens a lot. The saying is, well, you can't fire 20 players. You can fire a coach, though. And the message is bad, and nobody's listening to this guy anymore. And, the unfortunate part about it is the players know that they have that as a weapon. There are times when players just decide that they're not going to play for a guy, and they force management into making a change with the coach. But listen, here we are, 16, 17 games into the season. And now you're going to tell me that this guy has got to get out of here because this season is going to be lost. This is the same coach that was behind the bench when the Blue Jackets knocked off Tampa in one of the biggest upsets of Stanley Cup playoffs all time. And now all of a sudden he can't figure this out. And he doesn't belong here. Now look, you make good points. You make good points about the special teams. The special teams are an issue, and we talked about the special teams, and there should be something done to address the power play. I thought, again, in Colorado, they had a power play goal, but they also had two other opportunities that sucked the life out of the team at the time. So there needs to be something addressed when it comes to the power play. And I don't know what that something is. I don't know if that's bringing in another person again like they tried to do with Martin St. Louis last year or what the case is. But, okay, so you're right about that. There's work that needs to be done on the special teams. The lack of offensive structure, I don't really know what that means. What is they're not scoring goals. He's got a whole bunch of guys that should be scoring goals that aren't scoring goals because they are just mentally somewhere else right now and they can't get over their own mental hump. So what now? He's got to be a psychologist, psychiatrist. That's part of the job anyway. But when you have a 40-goal scorer that's getting prime chances and not scoring, how is that the fault of the coach when he's getting those chances? If those chances are never coming, then you have a stronger argument with me than that. Improper player utilization. Now what is that? That's one that just kind of I don't understand. Does that mean that you think Emil Bemstrom needs to skate more than 8 or 9 minutes a game? Because this is what I see all the time. People talking about, he doesn't use the young guys enough. He should do this and that. Look, to me, if Emil Bemstrom, I almost said I don't care what he did when he played in Europe, and that's not true. So I'm glad I caught myself on that. But he did well enough to get himself this shot in the NHL, okay? But he's been here for all of 10 minutes. And why should he be taking the ice time of Cam Atkinson or an Oliver Bjorkstrand? This is a thing that kills me. When people say to me all the time, well, this guy should get more minutes. Okay, who do you want to take him away from? Whose minutes do you want to take away? Do you want to take away a Nick Foligno that's been in this league and played 500 games just because he's not playing well in a certain stretch? I mean, I think there is a pay your dues kind of a period, to be quite honest with you. And what we're talking about here with these players, and I'm going to say Texier and Bemstrom, because those are the two guys that people talk to me the most about and getting more ice time. And that's the things that I say is who you're going to take it away from. Who do you want to take it away from? You want to take it away from Bjorkstrand? You want to take it away from Nyquist? You want to take it away from Boone Jenner? You want to take it away from, who am I forgetting? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think you have to learn to play in the league. And the other part of this is we're not talking about Sidney Crosby-type players, okay? I mean, these guys were not number one overall picks. Texier was a second-round pick. You know why he's so popular in the system is because there was no first-round pick the year that he was drafted. So he was the first player drafted by the Blue Jackets that year, which makes him a subject of focus, just to begin with. Same happened with Boone Jenner the year that he was drafted. Now, look, both of them have made their way to the league, and that's great. But what I'm saying is this is not a Sidney Crosby. It's not a Nathan McKinnon. It's not a Connor McDavid. They shouldn't come in and get 20-plus minutes per night. They've got to learn and earn. So if that's not what you mean by improper player utilization, I'll apologize for that. What I'm saying in a long-winded way is the problems with this team, I don't think, lie with John Tortorella. As a matter of fact, is this team, the way it's constructed, really a Tortorella team? Or is he battling and trying to conform to what he has? And I think that's part of what's going on here too. But to just say it's time to fire the coach, this is a coach that has changed so much stuff here. And this is where I'll really be accused of being an apologist. But this guy has changed everything here. In my opinion, if John Tortorella doesn't come along, this franchise is still mired in the muck. Right now, it's a 3-time-in-a-row playoff appearing team, and it was a contender last year, okay? And I think John Tortorella is a really big part of that. So to get out there and say, when is it time for a coaching change, and who are you going to put in that job? You tell me that. Who are you going to put into that job? You're going to have to get somebody from the outside. Then there's another learning. They're going to have to learn the personnel and all that stuff. And now all the things that you're complaining about are going to be compounded problems because you're going to have somebody that's not as familiar. Are you going to put one of the current assistants as the head coach? Is that your solution to the problem? Or are you going to bring in Mike Eaves from Cleveland, who's been here for 2 months as the American Hockey League coach? Where are you going to go with this? I mean, who are you going to put in place? Who are you going to put in place that's going to do a better job than a Hall of Fame coach in John Tortorella? Tell me that. And again, and then this gets replied to on Twitter from an all-knowing guru from everything that I see. And, oh, yes, we got to get this done before the season is lost. Look, if the season winds up being lost, it's going to be because they lost talent during the offseason and the guys that are here haven't haven't adjusted their games to make up for that loss. That's, in my opinion, that's the bottom line. I don't think that coaching change is something that at this point even needs to be discussed. I'm answering your question because you sent it, but I'm also telling you I think it's a ridiculous thing to think of right now. Will my mind change as the year goes on? We'll see. But I'm telling you right now, as you ask me this question, I think that John Tortorella is pretty much what this organization has right now. I think what makes this organization relevant is John Tortorella within the NHL. I think people talk about the Blue Jackets because of John Tortorella. And, you know, he's got a track record, and I think he's done a great job here. And there's growing pains going on with this group. So if they were to turn around and rip off 5 wins in a row, I wouldn't get this question. But until they do, I'm going to have to deal with it. And I'm going to have to be a Tortorella apologist, which, again, I'm sure that there are many of you out there that are thinking just that right now. But the fact of the matter is, you ask me questions, I give you my honest answer, and you've got it right there. That'll do it for today's edition of CBJ in 30, presented by Tel Ohio Credit Union. You can send me questions not only for the Monday mailbag, but you can ask me anything you want, anytime you want. All you have to do is go on Twitter and send that question to me at Bobby Mack Sports. Blue Jackets and the Montreal Canadiens are going to play tomorrow night here in Montreal. That'll be a 7 o'clock game tomorrow night. And I am also scheduled to sit down with John Tortorella and talk to him about some of the problems that he's having with his team right now. And as you know, when I sit with him, we'll talk about the team and we'll talk about much, much more. So that's going to do it once again for today's CBJ in 30. It is presented by Tel Ohio Credit Union, and I'm Bob McElligott saying so long.